Thank you for watching the second in my series of summaries from my book, In Progress, Dangerous Ideas, and my homage to James Burke and his series, The Day the Universe Changed and Connections, which inspired my style of documenting historical highlights. While my first episode spanned several centuries and covered links in general from classical antiquity to the modern secular world, this and the following videos will be shorter and much more restricted in the topical information presented. The content from my chapter in Dangerous Ideas on the rise of the Catholic Church has become so long and detailed, it has become a book of its own which I have titled Sins of the Fathers, and which will contain the details behind the summarized information presented in the first series of 4 videos documenting the Church's rise to European dominance. This series will present the self-proclaimed papal rhetoric that served Vatican political ambitions and desire for control, through the strategic use of myths, half-truths, and outright fabrications. Claims of papal supremacy became established Catholic truths, and over the centuries, the questionable origins of these claims were forgotten in the mists of time. But first, the necessary contextual background. Let's start with one verse in the Bible that is at the core of Vatican claims to primacy, and that is troublesome in many respects. Distinguished biblical scholar, the late Professor Vermes, notes that the passage which claims Peter will be the head of the Church only occurs in Matthew. Why do Mark, Luke, and John not cite the same proclamation of Jesus? Vermes speculates that this promotion of Peter to the head of the Church is not authentic to Jesus, but is a highly questionable insertion. Further, New Testament scholars, such as Bart Ehrman and others, highlight that Jesus, and later Paul, led apocalyptic end-times ministries that were convinced the kingdom of God would occur in their lifetimes, and therefore no church would have been required. 2. There was no established church at all in the first century, and only well into the second was there a church with a priestly hierarchy and a bishop in Rome. The next major myth surrounding Peter, his presence in Rome, also didn't appear until the middle of the 2nd century. Professor George Damasus and his excellent resource, The Invention of Peter, also covers the problems with the mythologies surrounding Peter. Damasus points out that the story of Peter's appearance in Rome doesn't show up until the writings of Justin Martyr, who died approximately 165, and later texts, such as the Martyrdom of Peter and the Acts of Peter, which are at the roots of all the myths which persist about Peter and Rome. And yet, in none of these stories is there a claim that Peter was ever the bishop of a church in Rome. No, Paul, on the other hand, had always been associated with Rome. His letter to the Romans, imprisoned, executed, and buried there, whereas, as shown, Peter's links to Rome are mythological creations of a later period. Dermot McCulloch, emeritus professor of the history of the Church at Oxford, wrote A History of Christianity, a masterful work of scholarship that details centuries of the evolution of Christian history across its varied denominational incarnations. And Professor McCulloch points out in the book, Peter got a huge boost over Paul when Constantine endowed the basilica which bears Peter's name on Vatican Hill. The next major event in Vatican claims to papal primacy came from Damasus, Pope from 366 to 84, who became the first to claim a direct line of succession from Peter, building on the promotion of Peter that Constantine had given decades earlier. Professor McCulloch also did a 6-part BBC series in 2009 based on his book, which I highly recommend that anyone interested in the subject matter watch. In episode 2, he discusses how Pope Damasus used the elevation of Peter to his advantage.
The crucial steps towards centralized power were taken 30 years after Constantine's death. The decision to promote Peter over Paul was exploited to the full. That laid foundations for the later papacy. It was during the time of Pope Damasus I that the Bishop of Rome was established as bishop in unbroken succession from St. Peter. Well, I'll stick my neck out and say that I don't believe that Peter was bishop in Rome. You'd be hard put to find anyone before the time of Pope Damasus who made that claim. The list of the bishops of Rome up to about 180 is just that, a list, linking Damasus back to the disciple who knew Jesus, Peter. You might say that Paul was now surplus to requirements.
As noted in the video, not only did Damasus claim succession from Peter, McCulloch further details in his book, writing, "Moreover, it was in Damasus's time that Peter came to be regarded not merely as the founder of the Christian Church in Rome, but also as its bishop. So, only then, 300 years after Peter died, did Pope Damasus expropriate the invented ties of Peter to Rome and declared himself the first bishop in order to strengthen his own claims to primacy. It was following events that transpired at the Second Ecumenical Council, the one held in Constantinople in 381, that Damasus declared Peter was the first bishop of Rome. What provoked Damasus was the elevation of the Metropolitan of Constantinople above Antioch and Alexandria, second only to Rome in prerogative of honor, not in authority. While only 5 Latin bishops had attended Nicaea, there were none at Constantinople. Whether they were not invited or chose not to attend is a matter of speculation. History professor Frederick J. Baumgartner writes that Damasus encouraged the emperor to name the bishop of Rome Bishop of Bishops, with jurisdiction over the whole church, and that the Eastern bishops called the Council of Constantinople specifically to refute the increasing claims of primacy coming from Damasus. Freeman notes that the elevation of the Bishop of Constantinople so infuriated Pope Damasus that he retaliated by claiming their primacy rested on their succession from Peter. I'll stop this video here, as I have presented the groundwork of how the myths of Peter came to be established, when, and how they first came to be used by Damasus. The next video will pick up with the growing power of the papacy, not just politically, but also of their increasing claims to primacy over other bishops who owe their obedience to Rome. If you like my content, please like and subscribe to get notified of new videos. Please also consider supporting my work by becoming a Patreon sponsor. You can also find me on the following platforms.